Hi, welcome to our first episode of Scholarship to Practice. I'm Bridget Burns.
And I'm Dr. Derrick Tillman-Kelly, and we're from the University Innovation Alliance. In Scholarship to Practice, each episode will bring you a short conversation with a scholar whose insight and learning can enhance the work of student success practitioners day to day.
And as an administrator for the past 20 years, there were far too many times where I was in a conversation that started with, if only we knew, or I wonder. And later, when I was getting my EDD at Vanderbilt in higher ed leadership and policy, I was surprised, shocked, a little disappointed to discover that in many of those cases, there already was research that we could have been using to answer those questions. Often, time, capacity, academic writing would get in the way. Who knows? But at the end of the day, we need to have those who are conducting research to have a close relationship with those who are implementing, and we need the implementers to be able to signal where there's new research needed. So that's what this conversation is about. That's what this show is about, is bridging that conversation and creating an engaging space where we're uplifting and amplifying current, exciting scholars who are doing groundbreaking research that we think will help you do your job better. This is Scholarship to Practice.
And today we're joined by Dr. Constance ILoh, a professor and anthropologist who explores the landscape of access and exclusion from across the P12 or P20 education pipeline. We're going to primarily focus on her model of college-going decisions and trajectories. Hi, Constance. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being our first guest.
Thank you. I'm excited.
We're excited, especially there's been so much talk right now about admissions and there's all of this focus, and bringing someone who's actually done the research about the work that we need to be talking about in this moment, super important. And we're so excited that you took the time.
Yeah, so thank you again. And let's just jump right in. How would you describe your work to a family member or someone you've met casually?
Okay. I would describe my work and the research that I do as an exploration of the culture and business of higher education and what these aspects mean and what consequences they present for undersupported, underrepresented, and marginalized communities, specifically low-income communities, Black and Latinx communities, so students of color, and also really just the everyday American, the single mother, the student that's over the age of 22, that often isn't really represented in the education landscape. And so looking at the culture and the business of higher education is really important because I think that those aspects really have a lot to say and really shape the who, the what, the where of college access and opportunity.
That's super helpful. So you talked about the culture and the business of higher ed, but is there a key aspect or a feature in the current culture or business model that really stands out to you? And can you share a little bit about why?
Sure. So, hopefully this doesn't, come across any type of way, but I mean this, very seriously, Derrick and Bridget. Deflection. Deflection is what comes up immediately as we talk about this culture and business model within higher education. I think deflection is what has allowed higher education to survive and thrive. So what do I mean by deflection? Let's take an institution. If they can get you to focus on how, exclusive they are, maybe you're not thinking about, whoa, this is really elitist, or this is really harming, non-white communities. There's something wrong here. But as long as you're focusing on this exclusivity, you're not really paying attention to, some deep-seated issues. I think about issues of fit as it relates to, let's say, students and faculty of color. Well, what if we can get you to focus on the fact that, they're not really a fit, or, something's wrong, or, the pipeline. We're not really focusing on racism embedded in recruitment and retention of students and faculty, or the fact that, people's work and study trajectories are, ongoing horror movies. We're not really focusing on those sorts of things. We're focusing on the fact that, it's not really a fit. And, even most recently, this conversation about, white fragility, if we can get, the focus on, white fragility, no one no one really means any harm. No one's, upset or out to be racist. We're not really talking about the fact that there are deep-seated harms and violences that are happening in the realm of post-secondary education that really need answers and need to be addressed. So again, this issue of deflection being important, and it's really important to think about what type of product is higher education. So again, it's not a cheeseburger that you eat and throw away. It is an experience good, probably one of the most strong examples of an experience good. I mean, some people are in higher education for months, for years. Some of the participants I've been privileged to interview have been in the ecosystem for decades. So, we're talking about a space where there's so many different narratives happening at one time. And really what I think higher education often does is they pick the optimal one, the one that shows it in its best light, in order to negate and not pay attention to what else is happening. And so a metaphor to sort of bring this all together. You guys are going to be able to tell I'm hungry just by, this analogy, but your girl has really been trying to eat healthy. I've been really trying to take better care of myself. One cannot survive on gummy bears alone. So I've been going to salads. I've been turning to salads. They have been important. So let's just say, you're like, I really want a salad, but the base of the salad, the spinach, the kale, the lettuce, is wilted. It's bad. It's just bad. It's not gonna be okay. It's not gonna be good. Let's say for whatever crazy reason you decide, well, I'm just gonna throw some tomatoes on that, like some fresh cheese, some homemade salad dressing. Is the base of the salad still not bad? Yes. Is it gonna taste horrible? Absolutely. Are you probably gonna get sick? Yes. I say all that to say, I think with this deflection, we sort of see higher education, like just throwing, these toppings, like these sort of fresh things that really detract from the fact that the base is not good. Like it is not well, folks. And we really need to address that. No matter how you eat it, when you eat it, it's not going to be okay. And maybe you can't see that the lettuce is bad at the bottom with all these fresh tomatoes. Oh, but it's still bad. It still is. So, I asked myself with these, sort of these race colloquium series or like these targeted, hires, or maybe one initiative, 1 year to get a few more, post-traditional students in or students of color. A lot of them, are still not satisfactory in addressing the fact that there's a lot wrong. Like, let it be a year, elitism is going to pop right back up. Racism is going to rear its ugly head in a month, in a week, maybe after the meeting. So let's just be serious about the fact that we cannot keep treating higher education as this sort of salad that we can sort of remake that's still bad. And to me, that is what that deflection in the culture and the sort of model of higher education represents. This sort of attempt to do all the things, and some of the core things are deeply flawed and problematic, and we're still not addressing them.
Your comments are already resonating with our live viewers. We're already getting some comments from loving the deflection, just getting some general love in general. So appreciate folks who are back at home and appreciating the analogy that we're hearing.
Yeah, and so Constance, in some ways, your analogy seems like the reckoning that is the year 2020, right? And so I'm wondering, if all of that is true, why do you think other frameworks or perspectives on college choice don't seem to care about or capture these very ideas?
Yeah. That's a great question. In a lot of ways, I think people mean well. I want to make that clear, but I also think our focus is concerning in some respects. So I think about a few different things that really distort and make it difficult to really understand, what's happening in this sort of like ecosystem of college going. Really just first saying that choice is happening at all. Choice is a very strong framing of what I see happening in post-secondary education. Actually, I don't think it really captures much of what's happening for this sort of very heterogeneous student population or prospective student population. It sort of presupposes that people have all these options. So we're not talking about higher education as this grocery store experience where, oh, well, you want the name brand college, it's on the top shelf, or, you know, you want the Target or Walmart brand college, you know, you can get that if that's what you can afford. You know, for some people in that grocery store, there's maybe one option, there's maybe one institution that even made them feel like we actually want you, or you should be here, or they actually had to seek out, you know, something because nothing was coming to them or presenting itself. So really just this framing around choice, it just, again, I think it lends itself to a very privileged way of sort of coming to higher education and sort of navigating it, because it means that, you know, hey, you had options. And for a lot of people, based on their life circumstance, their race, the income background that they have, we know that to be a farce. Like, that's just not the reality that's happening. So, you know, one, this, you know, framing of choice, which is why, like, in the model I created, like, I just didn't deal with it at all. You know, it just was that deeply flawed to me. No shade to anybody else. It's all love over here. Also, just this reality that when I was, you know, doing different studies, you know, I was using, you know, popular conceptions that in a lot of ways were very linear and sequential in fashion. And, you know, that's a very specific way to think about, you know, how someone comes to college or comes to decide on a college. You know, this sort of, oh, I started here, I thought about it, you know, I searched, you know, and I ended up somewhere. That's not a lot of the students that, you know, or prospective students that I, you know, have the blessing to be able to engage. You know, they started at a college, they're at two other ones, they're thinking about going back to the one they first started. I mean, we're talking about multiple institutions or multiple attempts, starting and stopping out all across the way. So when we have something like that that's happening, any sort of like lens that looks at college going as, okay, you made a decision and that's where the buck stops, because arguably you're gonna finish there, is really, you know, it's scary. Because again, someone might be making a decision a year later when they realize, man, that college wasn't it, or I don't know what's going on, or this isn't going to work out. So just this reality that a lot of these narratives and pathways are convoluted, it's serious. Like, we have to take that seriously, which means like we got to wrestle with why we're talking about anything as linear and sequential. And third, I would just say, again, you know, I think people have meant well, but just this sort of reality that a lot of students aren't even captured in our conception of the 21st century college student. A lot of sectors aren't even captured in our conception of where people are going to higher education, whether those, you know, are community colleges or even proprietary colleges. You know, I find that those are the institutions that are often grossly left out of these conversations, but we're talking about students that aren't just starting college or thinking about it at age 18. Maybe they're thinking about it at age 40. We're talking about people who aren't dependent on someone, they have dependents. You know, what does that mean? We're talking about people who higher education maybe failed them a few decades ago and they really want to take a stab at it again. So anytime, you know, we're serious about all these kinds of life circumstances, trying to, you know, be in the pursuit of post-secondary education, I think it's really important to think about, well, where did these lenses come from? You know, what does the canon say about these groups? So those are sort of three reasons why I feel like a lot of lenses and perspectives sort of really distort or make it harder for us to realize like what is happening with this sort of college-going conundrum.
Yeah, and I hear you in that saying there's some sort of idealized approach that sort of comes from the campus lens versus where a student might actually be centered. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So part of the reason I reached out to you initially to be on the show is not just the leadership role and the presence that you I think you play a really vital role in the academic setting. You're showing us all what's possible to be a public scholar, and I love that. And I think it's awesome. I think I first connected with you after I watched you do an Instagram live conversation. I was just like, yes, we're gonna bring her.
That was lit. It was.
But as someone who started at a community college and did not have any choice in that process, it was entirely like, how far could my car go? And I knew it could make it just like 5 hours. And so 5 hours away was where, that could happen. I was also drawn to you because of your model. And I think that for practitioners who are at home, what's really valuable is I want Dr. ILoh, I'd love for you to talk a bit about your model for college-going decision and trajectories. But I also, for folks at home, I want you to actually have now the language to use to reference a model that questions some of the fundamental assumptions in the meetings that you're going to be in on campus. So can you talk about the model of college-going trajectories or decision and trajectories for folks and how they might use it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, for those interested in reading more on my website, I actually have my latest sort of text on this framework, but I'm happy to speak about it here as well. So given the things that I just said about, some of these limitations and challenges and how we sort of think about college going, I wanted to think about what would it mean to consider decisions and trajectories in this sort of like more holistic, contextually based fashion. So I wanted to think of something that, again, didn't, frame or center choice, and thought about, well, what components are present as we think about, a decision or trajectory. So I wanted to build something that was ecologically based, because I think the sort of space physically, the ecosystems around someone, their actual ecologies, before, during, a decision are extremely important. So with this framework, it's really a meeting of these three different components that come together and sort of shed light on any individual's decision or trajectory. So those three components are information, time, and opportunity. So again, these are separate components. They mean their own things, but it's when they sort of come together, like that part in the middle, we then see, oh, okay, I can see how, this individual arrived at this decision or has had this trajectory where they started here, and they're now here, or, maybe what was, options before, has greatly, been limited because, they're consistently making decisions. So with information really looks at the quality of, the types of, the quantity of information anyone has, and sort of thinking about the prospect of college. And also, like, it really dives deep into the information asymmetries that are really apparent when we're thinking about why someone has sort of ended up where and what that means. The time component is also a part of the framework, and that really sort of situates the time in someone's life, what's happened in their life, but also what moment we're in society. So it looks at, what has happened in, this 40-year-old's life that's led them to think about college, but it also situates this moment that we're in. College going right now is qualitatively different than it was 12 months ago. Like, we're not even having the same conversation because of, coronavirus. It's real. So everything has changed. So many things are remote. So with this time component, we're really able to talk more extensively about, well, what moment are we in society that makes college going what it is? Maybe some legislation has passed and there's free college in a state. That's going to make, higher education, possible in ways that maybe it wasn't before that legislation was passed. So it looks at things like that, but it also looks at, what time, in that life of that person we're really sort of thinking about, whether it's just, fresh out of high school, or, I've been, through some spaces. So with that, we also have this last component, which is opportunity. And that sort of situates these sort of like real and perceived thinking that people have about like what is possible for them, so the reality of, but maybe like the perception of. So with that, I sort of think about, for a particular college, one individual might say, oh yeah, like I could go there, like everything sort of works, I see myself there. Another person might say, that place is hella racist, or, oh my God, like they don't do anything for, single parents. This is crazy. So again, real, perceived, those things are something that we need to take seriously when we think about why someone has made a decision or they've had the trajectory that they've had. So, oh my gosh, I'm thinking of Captain Planet, like with our powers combined, like all these three components like combined, like we have like insight into a decision and trajectory. So these things are really important. And I chose those elements because in and of themselves, they sort of exhaust all the other questions and inquiries one might have about why would a decision or trajectory be made. So I'm really excited about like the possibilities of it, not just with different studies, but just in practice, which is what this is about. So I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it more extensively.
I love it. And I think about folks who are sitting around a table where they're thinking about fall term, or I know people are worried about enrollment. Yeah. And they're thinking about how we could possibly market ourselves and thinking about that being the issue, when really it's about, well, in the community that we're in, who needs serving? And information asymmetry, like looking at those variables you've identified as a means by which institutions should therefore make decisions and drive change. It should be based on these core principles.
Yeah, for sure.
And I saw the comment, Bridget, that you highlighted from Malik on Facebook, and he mentioned that it was very accurately capturing non-traditional college experiences. But hearing you speak, Constance, I feel like you would say institutions should be thinking about that for every student, and you might need to highlight or center the
Yes. So the model, again, because of the kinds of students and prospective students I was privileged to engage, as I was doing different studies, especially on the community college and for-profit college sector, I met, all kinds of prospective students. So the model is created to be expansive for all kinds of students. Like, yes, like it is, intentional in that I really thought about groups that have been excluded in the ways that we think about college going, absolutely. But it's also meant for us to even think comparatively about, student A, and student B, and how like these different decisions and trajectories, come to bear. So it's really, a means to look at all kinds of people, all kinds of prospective students, and all kinds of sort of ways that people find themselves in this, crazy place called higher ed. Yeah, thank you for that, though.
No problem.
And so you mentioned, we mentioned that you made your framework available on your website.
Yeah.
And folks can connect with you there. Where else can folks show their support?
Oh my gosh. Wow, that sort of, the website is a huge space to connect with me. I'm also on different social media platforms. So, I'm on Twitter. Love Twitter. Twitter is awesome. But I'm also on Instagram, and I do lives from time to time. I have a Facebook page, but really just, I really try to make things accessible through the website. People can reach me or contact me, directly, through that platform as well. But there's a number of places I can be found. So it's really just up to the individual. Holler at your girl, but the website is a great place to start, for sure.
Holler, and also cite.
Oh,
wherever possible. I'll bring that back up. And we're getting more, you're super accessible to your students and other scholars. Yes, you're getting a lot of love online. People are very excited to have you here. So thank you again for making the time. The last question we have, and I think I have, and I can guess based on what I've seen online, what your answer might be. In the spirit of encouraging others to take better care of themselves, I know that we're all feeling zoomed out, and I'm just wondering about what's helping you right now. And what does self-care look like for you right now that might give
You sounded kind of stressed when you asked that question, Bridget. Like,
I need some tips.
It's wow. It's been a time for a lot of us. I love that question. And I'll just start off by saying, I've seen some, crazy things. And, I mentioned deflection earlier. So I feel like sometimes like we get, I've seen a lot of rhetoric where people are kind of talking about, self-care and, do all these things. And man, there are not enough bubble baths and incense that can be lit, to move out of oppression. Like that is just not going to happen. So my goodness, again, my hope is that people take seriously the institutional violences and harms that still exist and are going to exist, no matter how much self-care one does, and really taking seriously those imperatives. That being said, I feel like there's just no way I could even frame or answer that question without even mentioning God, in the pandemic, outside of the pandemic. Like God is just a constant. And just thinking about even those that work in the higher education industry, whether you're on the practitioner side, staff, student, faculty, administration, I think that there's so much ease in conflating like who you are with what you do. And so when I think about like God, I think about a hope that's not attached to like who I am or what I do or how people see me, but really just like, how awesome and great God is. And, also just to be, even more candid, I've seen people who have like all the things, all the awards, all the things one can get, even things I've aspired to, and they like have no peace, like zero peace is had for them. And I'm just like, oh, that's not it. Like, that's really not it. And I think about like just being grateful that like peace can be found in God. I mean, I've even seen scholars who are more than twice my age, bullying people, out of the academy. And I'm like, that's not the move when I'm 70. Like, that's not going to be the move. Like, if the Lord blesses me with that many years, that's not it, but you can tell like they don't have peace, and again, with all the stuff, with all the things. So I just, any kind of question about taking care of myself, like my day, my life has to like center God. But in terms of things that I do, oh man, skating is bae. I have to be honest. I'm learning. I've learned how to, I can skate backwards for longer than 30 seconds. Your girl is coming up. In a year, I think I will be, my skating will be TikTok worthy. Not right now, not in 6 months, but in a year. But I feel like anyone who sort of wants to challenge me in skating, they need to do it now, because in a year, it's over for everyone. It's over. Like, it's a wrap.
I love it.
I'll be better. And I'll say too, gardening has been lit also. It normalizes failure, which is serious. I just had a plant die on me. I don't know what happened. I watered it. I thought I was a good steward, and it was a mess. It's allowed me to be connected with, students I care about, like people I care about. It's a workout. I feel closer to God, but man, I'm not that great at that either, but I'm learning, and I'm outside, I'm getting, exposure to the sun. So it's all awesome. But I would say those things for sure have been just God overall.
And in some ways, that's perhaps the best way to close, right? That this work isn't about perfection. It's about trying and improving by dedicating the time and the energy. And so on behalf of the University Innovation Alliance and Inside Higher Ed, we just want to say thank you, Dr. Constance ILoh, for being our first guest on Scholarship to Practice.
It's been awesome. Thank you guys. It was such a pleasure. I'm honored for sure.
We're super honored. You are, you're a superstar. You've been a superstar in the field for a long time, and I'm, not so long, that it's just an honor to have you on here. And I also just think you're setting the tone for the kinds of conversations that we want to have, that we think will arm people with the tools they need to have different conversations in their meetings on campus, to be able to make decisions to better serve students.
Oh, thank you. I'm a baby in the game, but I'm growing. So I appreciate that.
All right. Well, Forbes says you're, kind of a big deal. So for folks who want to learn more, ConstanceILoh.com, but also follow her on Twitter at Constance ILoh, and we've linked her. And thank you again, Dr. ILoh. If you want to see follow-up of this episode, it's going to be available on the UIA's YouTube channel. And otherwise, we will see you next time on Scholarship to Practice. Thank you again, Derrick, for being an excellent co-host. And for those of you at home, we hope this has given you a few nuggets of insight to think differently about your day and how you're working with students, and perhaps maybe you'll pick up gardening. So just maybe take better care of yourself. So we'll talk to you later.